Good evening, sir. Our Honorable Vice Chancellor has just joined. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
স্পিকার কি একজনই আছেন? মিস্টার সৈকত বিশ্বাস আছেন নাকি?
হ্যাঁ স্যার, একজন।
আচ্ছা, তোমরা তো কিছু বলবে না?
আমরা স্যার জাস্ট ইন্ট্রোডাকশন পার্ট বলবো, মেইনলি।
কি আসছে নাকি? ওই ভৌমিক কে রেখেছো?
ভৌমিককে এটাতে রাখিনি, নেক্সট আরেকটা করবো, আর্টিফিশিয়াল ইন্টেলিজেন্স, ওখানে রাখবো স্যার।
আচ্ছা আচ্ছা,
ওনাকে ওখানে রাখবো। শুরু করে দেবো স্যার?
হ্যাঁ শুরু করো।
So, good afternoon, everybody. I am Dr. C.M. Hussain, Head of the Department of Pharmaceutical Technology, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad University of Technology. I am the moderator today. On behalf of Department of Pharmaceutical Technology, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad University of Technology, MAKAUT, West Bengal, I heartily welcome all the participants, faculty, students, researchers of West Bengal and different parts of the states of India. Let me introduce our panelists. Before introducing, I am telling you the today's topic of today's webinar is the future prospect of pharmacovigilance and drug safety. This is very emerging area in the field of pharmaceutical technology because lots of job opportunities are there and it will generate more avenue in future. So we have with us now our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Soikat Moitro, Honorable Vice Chancellor of Maulana Abul Kalam Azad University of Technology, which is the largest university of West Bengal. And we have with us Mr. Soikat Biswas. He is the Global Head of Life Science and Digital the Operation of Global Head of Wipro Limited. He is eminent speaker today. And Professor Punabesh Chakraborty, he is a stalwart person in the field of pharmaceutical technology. So without wasting time, I would like to request Professor Soikat Moitro, our Honorable Vice Chancellor, MAKAUT West Bengal, to deliver keynote address of this program. Sir, please.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hossain. Today, very important topic will be discussed, that is pharmacovigilance and drug safety. And one of the interesting feature is that from the university, we are planning to introduce this program on pharmacovigilance because as Dr. Hossain pointed out, this particular area, pharmacovigilance, has a tremendous potential in a healthcare system in India particularly. As this subject, it is basically the subject goes, it is basically the assessment, monitoring, and discovering of interaction among drugs and their effects in human. Now, lots of medicines, these are being developed and being, presented in the market by different drug manufacturers. These are pharmaceuticals and biotechnological medicines. These are basically targeted for curing, preventing, and treating diseases. But there are some risks associated with these medicines, which we call adverse drug reactions. This can create serious harm to our patients. So for safety medications, this advanced drug reaction monitoring, this requires for each medicine throughout its life cycles during development of drugs, such as pre-marketing, including early stages of drug designs, clinical trial, and also post-marketing surveillance. It is detection, assessment, understanding, and prevention of these adverse drug reactions. In clinical research, pharmacogenetics, pharmacogenomics, these are becoming indispensable part in our clinical research. And variation of this human genome, this is the cause of variable response to drugs and susceptibility to the disease. These are determined, which is an important factor for early drug discovery for this pharmacovigilance. Traditionally, pharmacovigilance is involved in mining spontaneous reports submitted to national surveillance systems. Now, there are tremendous amounts of researches are going on in pharmacovigilance, and this involves this use of data generated in different framework like electronic medical records, literature, patient reported data in health forums. And therefore, lots of, and basically as it involves with the handling of large volume of data, many of these data handling and data, this data uses organizations, particularly information technology based organizations, they have come up in these particular subjects for gaining, this for processing, analyzing, gaining meaningful insights and recommending different these aspects from this data. And this is mostly this is related to human safety information in the post-marketing phases. And this information of this data-driven subject, this requires this people with background from pharmaceuticals, biotechnologicals, and allied fields, and also with some knowledge of handling tools and techniques in data analysis, big data analysis, and all the related IT-related skills. So therefore, in near future, what we are foreseeing, we will have a tremendous career opportunity for all these young students, young researchers, prospective researchers from these pharmaceuticals and biotechnologicals and biological background with the suitable skills in handling all these data analytics, data informatics, and data science, big data handling. And this will be very interesting thing because combination of these things, combinations of the skills and all these things, and that will be given rise, that will tremendous applications of this knowledge and skills in this area. And I'm very happy that today's webinar are very the knowledgeable and experienced person from Wipro healthcare system, Mr. Shoikat Vishwas. He will be sharing his experiences and ideas regarding this. That will be this some sort of real life case studies, presentations, and sharing of meaningful practical information before you. And therefore, my advice to all of you is to take a proper note of all these things. And as in all our webinars, I tell repeatedly, make a community for continuing or this particular type of knowledge generation process, because we have created discussion forum, discussion front in our webinar format. There you have the opportunity to interact with expert persons amongst yourselves also. If you have, you can always explore all these things. This will be a fascinating subjects in near future in a more structured way. This is coming up, and I believe that in our university system, Dr. Hussain, Professor Pranavesh Chakraborty, they will be taking up these subjects in near future for building up successful career of many students. So with this, I wish all the best to all the participants, and particularly I congratulate Dr. Hussain and Professor Pranavesh Chakraborty for organizing this society relevant and industry relevant subject. And my sincere thanks goes to Mr. Shoikat Vishwas for responding to our call, or to present his lectures, sharing his views for the benefit of our learning community. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for highlighting the important features of the pharmacovigilance and drug safety to the participants. Thank you so much, sir. Actually, with the inspiration and guidance of our Honorable Vice Chancellor, we conduct so many webinars from our university. And couple of days before, we also conducted webinar on data analytics, which is also idea of our Honorable Vice Chancellor. He always try to focus on the emerging areas, and we try to involve ourselves to make it more better. So yes, pharmacovigilance is a very emerging area. As in pharmacovigilance, there is a mechanism to detect the safety of the drug by the process of identifying the adverse drug reaction. But many years before, in Charok Samhita, it is written that drugs, that is the compound that is used to treat the disease not only physically but mentally, spiritually, even without any side effect. And also they have added a point, very important point, long years before, that that drug will not produce any other disease. That is very important. When we are taking a drug that causes many side effects, parallelly it causes many disease, that is called physician induced disease. Because many patient antipsychotic people who are taking antipsychotic drugs for a long time, that drugs causes Parkinsonism disease parallelly, which is called a hospital drug induced disease or physician induced disease. So in pharmacovigilance, objectives of the pharmacovigilance webinar today is just to improve the fair understanding of the newcomer of the student, pharmacy student, and also to let them understand what is happening actually in the industry, what they have to do in the industry, what is the mechanism. Number three, here I would like to focus that MAKAUT Department of Pharmaceutical Technology is going to start this from this session the certificate course on the pharmacovigilance in collaboration with Wipro. We will first start some crash course, a 3 months certificate course to make the students industry ready, so that it will be convenient for the student to get job in Wipro, Cognizant, and other IT industry to work in the pharmacovigilance sector. So I would like to request Professor Ponabesh Chakraborty to say a few lines on the pharmacovigilance. Sir, please.
Actually, at the end, I will discuss regarding the total discussion and the deliberation.
Okay.
And now only I can tell the students that our university is going to start, as Professor Hossain told, a 3 months crash course on pharmacovigilance with the help of Wipro, and the architect of Wipro, Mr. Soipat Bishas, is helping a lot in this connection. And another course we will be starting. This 3 months course will be for pharmaceutical technologists who are B.Pharm and M.Pharm, for them 3 months course. For other subjects like biotechnology, biochemistry, microbiology, dental, Ayurvedic, for them it will be 1 year course in collaboration with you. Then we are going to start some other courses. Already we had a talk with CDAC for finalizing the data analytics course, which will be named as pharmaceutical analytics. And today, now let us enjoy the deliberation of Mr. Bishar. Then at the end, I'm going in detail regarding the total pharmacovigilance and today's seminar. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, Pranav, sir. So without wasting much time, I would like to request Mr. Soikat Biswas, the global head. But before starting the talk, I would like to introduce Mr. Soikat Biswas to our participants. Soikat Biswas is he is a global head of medical devices, pharma and services, life science digital operation with Limited. He did his bachelor degree from National Institute of Technology, Warangal, an MBA from prestigious Institute of India, and he also did his executive leadership program from Harvard University, US. Soikath has more than 2 decades of experience in IT and ITES industry, driving strategic global program for Fortune 500 clients. Strong knowledge and expertise in the life science industry, he has rich experience in driving global operations and outsourcing model, having worked with health and life sciences clients and engagement in US, UK, Ireland, and Asia. At present, he is a global head of life science, digital operation business of Wipro Limited. Prior joining Wipro, he worked almost 15 years with Cognizant. He was part of life science business, played several leadership roles based out of NJ, New Jersey, US. Every part of this career, he had major contribution in the healthcare business work in the US and also for National Health Service United Kingdom. A visionary leader spearheading transformating solution in life science space, advocating changes to improve business value meter of life science clients. So definitely he has traveled a great career. So I would like to request Mr. Soikot Biswas to deliver his talk. Mr. Biswas, please.
Thank you, Dr. Masum. First of all, good evening, everyone. And am I audible to all of you?
Yeah.
Thank you. My thankful note and, thanks to Dr. Mitro, Dr. Chakrabarti, as well as, Dr. Masum for conducting this webinar. And of course, Honorable Vice Chancellor Dr. Mitro was always being helpful and supportive. And this is one of the initiative we all are looking forward, which will certainly benefit a lot of a newcomer or the students who are landing into the life sciences industry after doing B Farm, M Farm, or any sort of life sciences educations. It will certainly benefit them a lot. And overall, without any wasting any time, I want to go through the today's topic. I just wanted to let you know the objective behind, as Dr. Masum, a few minutes back mentioned it. Uh, I get a lot of questions from students and, of course, people who just enter the industry, like what is the prospect, where we are going heading towards, what is there 5 years down the line in this area, and that is one perspective. And the perspective after passing out, the college education, there are a lot of questions in terms of what is actually pharmacovigilance, what is drug safety, is it both the same, and why we are getting into this, is it a really a good career. So when we thought about this particular topic, I personally felt that it there should be some basics to cover in the beginning, so that we bring everyone in the same line of understanding about this field. Yeah, some of the basics, and then of course we'll get into the higher end in terms of what is the career perspective over there, and then what is the market behind. And the most important part is the automation part. A lot of things are happening in the technology aspects. There are various questions I get during the town halls and a lot of other meetings. Certainly, I want to take those questions and share my perspective, and want to be a more of interactive session, because I always look forward to learning. Yeah, so every day is a learning journey for me, and certainly this is another session where I look forward to learn from all of you all. So with that note, I'll quickly kind of go to my slides. It's very few slides I have to kind of drive the discussions. So Dr. Masum, if you can go to the first slide.
Is it okay?
Yeah, so this is a quick agenda. So how we structured today's discussion. Next slide, please. Yeah. So this is something like people ask, like, what is pharmacovigilance? What is drug safety? I mean, if I want to kind of say like what is drug safety and what is pharmacovigilance, I just wanted to answer in one line. One is proactive, one is the reactive. Drug safety is basically your reactive one, and PV is basically your proactive. Yeah, that is just one way of looking at it. But why we are doing PV? Basically, it's the activities. Many thing has been already stated by Dr. Mitro, as well as that PV is an area where we do activities relating to the detection and the assessment and understanding of prevention of adverse events for any of the medicine related to the problem. Now, the question is what we are referring to. Basically, both the drug safety and the PV refers to the same function of gathering and reporting the adverse drug reaction. The main difference I already kind of stated lies in the value of the data generated. One is a reactive, the drug safety I'm talking about, and another is the PV, that the proactive one. Now we need to kind of slightly go back where we do the PV. And for that, I'll go to the next slide. If you can kindly go to the next slide. Yeah. So why? So what is pharmacovigilance? Where we actually do that? Typically, people always feel like, well, it's as a PMS activity, post-marketing surveillance activity. Yes, that's a P4 activity. You are absolutely right. But what happens, in phase 4, you do the post-marketing surveillance activity. There, you have the new indication, you have the rare DAG reactions in P4, but not necessary that you will be doing only during the P4. It happens in P1, P2, and P3. I mean the phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. I mean to say that. Yeah. So these are the phases where we check the safety, the efficacy of a drug in a much more controlled manner. For example, like I can share my personal experience. One of my previous clients, we used to do the SAR cases. Yeah, it's a clinical trial cases, which goes to the regulatory and the health authority. Yeah, so this individual case safety report, ICSR, what we call, it's not necessary that people sometimes relate only to the PMS. No, it's not like that. It can be in the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So keep that in mind. And that's what is the pharmacovigilance. I mean, in the slide, I don't want to read the slide. You can always kind of, go through the details. It's a comprehensive, the safety, which is always priority, the safety of the patient, whatever we do in relation to the use of the medicine, because that supports the public health program by providing the reliable and balanced information. I'll share more information in terms of the reportability and some other things. But yes, this effective assessment and the risk benefit profile of the medicine, this is very, very important when it comes to the pharmacovigilance. Yeah. So this is always, you keep in mind that PV not only happens, I mean, you should not relate only to the PMS, the post-marketing surveillance, but it does happen in P1, P2, P3, I mean, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And that's what it means. And another thing, keep in mind, what is the basic difference between the drug safety and the pharmacovigilance? Yeah, one is as I said, PV is the preventive, the proactive, what we call, and the drug safety is basically the reactive. Yeah. So with that, we move to the next slide. So quickly, if you can move to the next slide. Quickly, if we go to the next slide, yeah. So this is one slide I feel it is very, very important in the current scenario. The current scenario, the pandemic we are going through, the COVID-19, right? So this is a beautiful example, the drug thalidomide. Without any safety assessment, it has been prescribed for, pregnant women. And what has happened? Basically, we have thousands of children born, and they have various anomalies. There are, deformed eyes, ears, and others. There's several examples I can bring in. I was reading an article a few days back on COVID-19. One of the patient, recovered from corona 2 months back, and she took a drug. And that person is saying, like, hey, I'm going through some of the abnormalities and some of the kind of, discomfort. And when I consulted my doctor, the doctor is saying that it's a side effect of the drug. So, of course, the greater cause all the authorities are looking at to save more and more lives, which is the most priority. Vaccine, we are getting a lot of information on the vaccine, but typically you all know drug development takes billions of investments, dollars I'm talking about, and it takes a longer time period, almost like 10 years. Typically vaccine takes years to do tested. I'll also give another example. um, of course, I really don't want to name the drug, but this is one of the vaccine which was kind of launched and given it to a lot of children in Philippines. It's a dengue vaccine, and it's a very controversial one happened. Okay, and of course, so this vaccination program was run by the Philippines Department of Health, and what has happened is there are several death reported later with multi complications. Of course, it has been banned later point of time. It happened in 2017, just few years back. So the point I'm making is over here, the measures, the safety measure is so important over here, and that's why pharmacovigilance is important. And history says that. I just gave 2-3 example in front of you, but always remember this is very important. And the key aspect I want to bring it to, students who are landing up to the life sciences, industry. Always remember that two important aspect for any pharmaceutical company. One is the EDC, the clinical data repository, which is one of the backbone for the company. Another is the safety data, which is a backbone for the company, and these two are very, very important. So always remember, one, we talk about the clinical data management side of it. That's a different discussion altogether. And there's of course the pharmacovigilance, drug safety work what we talk about. So with that, giving some of the basics, so let's move on to the next slide. Yeah. So yeah, of course the questions comes to everyone's mind. It is really mandatory. Yes, of course it's mandatory. Yes. And as I said, like safety is the utmost important. The patient safety is the utmost important. The detection of the increased frequency, it all depends upon the patient profile, the doses, a lot of things. You have to identify the risk factors over here, and the early detection, of course, for any safety problem is very, very important. Now, when we talk about whether it's mandatory or not, I want to bring out another. I'll bring more and more examples that will actually help you out. Okay. Um, Many of you must be knowing a blockbuster drug in the cardiac disease, Lipitor, right? So the generic version of Lipitor is lowering the cholesterol, is launched by Ranbaxy a few years back. Of course, it's a blockbuster drug, but later point of time, it has been withdrawn for the market. Why? Because due to the death cases reported. Yeah, you can always Google it. Or all the information I'm sharing with you is the real life data. So certainly you can Google it more. You can learn more. With the interest of the time, I can share more over here. But yeah, the point I'm making is, like, if there is no safety signal indicated, then obviously next time you will see like an indication in the medication packet, right? The drug should not be taken by an individual who has a cardiac disease or similar problems, correct? But if there is a signal and then you see a death case happen, certainly that drug will be withdrawn from the market. And we have several examples. I just gave the example of Ranbaxy lowering the cholesterol, but there are several such examples over there. So you can able to make out like why pharmacovigilance is mandatory and why it's so important. Yeah. So with that, I'll go to the next slide in terms of the regulatory bodies. So there are several regulatory bodies, of course. Before I go to the regulatory bodies, you need to know two things. Yeah. So people who are in the the safety case processing, you must be aware of the terminologies like spontaneous literature, the clinical trial cases, the legal cases. Okay, the E2B cases, the R2 what we call, and of course the recent version is the R3. We'll go and talk about it later. But when you do a safety case processing and you go for a submission, just before the submission, in case of case processing, once you are done with the review assessment, you'll move to the submission. So basically what happens, you generate two forms for the regulatory authority submission. So please keep a note of this. One is what we call as a mid-watch form. Yeah. Another is called as a COMS. Yeah. The mid-watch form is specific to the FDA, the USA. Yeah. So if you just look at it, the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, that's the FDA. You have to generate that mid-watch, and you go for the submissions. But when it comes to the COMS, COMS is basically the Council for International Organization of Medical Science, what we call. It is meant for other countries' submission. And that's why I'm bringing at these are the two types of forms that you will be always be familiar with when you enter in this particular field. So coming back to the regulatory authorities, so the MHRA, the medicine and of course the healthcare product regulatory agency, what we call, is an executive agency of Department of Health and Social Care in United Kingdom. So MHRA is always for United Kingdom, and they are responsible for ensuring that the medicine and the devices works. I mean the medical devices. I mean works in a most acceptable in a safe manner. In India, what we call CDSO, CDSCO, sorry, is the Center for Drug Standards Control and Organization. That is for India. Typically, for Australia, we have the Therapeutics Goods Administration. That's the regulatory body for all the therapeutic goods in Australia. I already talked about the FDA, and then of course the EMA, the European Medicine Agency, and of course, prior to 2004, it was known as the European Agency for Evaluation of Medical Products, or European Medicine Evaluation Agency they call. But currently, it has been kind of renamed to EMA. So these are the various regulatory bodies who actually takes care of all the regulations, and it's kind of I'll put it in this way: they are the police. To kind of look at it like whether we take care of all the safety measures for the drugs, everything has been followed or not, all the standards being followed or not, so on and so forth. As I said, the patient safety is pioneer over here. So with that, I move to the next slide. So quickly, I'll take it through the various timelines. I'll shuffle through the slides over here. Every agency has its own timeline, and more or less is the same. The serious unexpected death cases or something like that, you have the fill in the 15 calendar days to report, the clinical trial days 7 days, and of course the literature reports as 15. So Dr. Masum, I'll quickly kind of shuffle through all this slide. Next is basically the European Union. There you have the 15 days, 90 days, and the 15 days. Okay. Now here I'll take a pause because this is very important. I mean, the previous slide, Dr. Masum, this is the Australia. Yeah, just pause over here. I mentioned about the E2B and the R3. So please take a note over here. This is has a very important demarcation. It came around, if I'm correct, November 2017. Yeah. So we have gone through that transition. So it's quite a huge one. Initially, it is to call as a R2. I mean, all the cases, the case report, what we used to receive. It's basically, the international standards for what we call as transmitting the medicine adverse events reports, yeah, to the ICH. but the recent version is the the R3. Now, what is basically how is it different? The R3 different from the R2? Basically, the few fields which has been modified, compared to the R2, but more importantly is capturing the detailed data, and it provides the options of the inclusiveness, what we call the standardization of the data, the collaboration with the other stakeholders. So always remember this UDRA vigilance, the R2, R3 is very important. And that's why I just wanted to pause when we discuss about the European drug regulatory authorities, I mean EMA, the timelines and others, the EU requirements, the 15 days, 90 days, and 15 days. When we went through the transition, a lot of cases where in the backlog, the timelines were not followed. Of course, when you go through the transitions, it does happens for any pharmaceutical companies. And that's why the regulatory bodies give a timeline like 1 year you have to be compatible. So if you kindly note, there is something going on currently as I speak, that is the medical devices, what we call as a UMDR, medical devices report, a very similar one. Because of the COVID-19, the timeline has been extended to next year May. So we are already going through that process for the medical devices side of it. But on the other side of it, already people, the pharmaceutical companies and others are compliant. So certainly, this is a very important one. So I'll kind of move along with the slides. Dr. Masum, if you can go to the next slide. So this is for Australia. Move along. Yeah, next slide. India, and then of course next, let's go to the next slide, the service and the pharmacovigilance, where I want to really spend some time. So pharmacovigilance, of course, there are questions being raised like, well, when we entered into this field, is it that we will be doing the individual case report processing? No, the answer is not only that. It does not restrict to that. If you just if you happen to talk to any of the pharmaceutical company people who are working in this area, the safety officer is one of the big positions over there. So certainly when you go to the trajectory, the ICSR, the QR activity, the quality review activity, the medical review activity, it starts with you do the triaging, you do the booking, you do the data entry processing, then you do the QR activity, then you do the MR activity. MR activity for a class 1 case or a date case has to be done by a physician. The prior work not necessary, it's needed, has to be done by any physicians or something. And then you go for the submissions where I talked about the MedWatch, SEOMS and others, right? Now, certainly there are other areas like aggregate safety report. This is one area. Certainly a person can look at the career. Then of course we have other safety reporting like the periodic safety report, the DSURs and others, okay? The safety narrative writing. So these are all the services which comes out of the overall, the end-to-end value chain of the pharmacovigilance. Yeah. So certainly it's a very promising career. As you move up the ladder, you build up your domain dirt in this particular field and you climb high. Yeah. So there is another critical question I always receive, from the youngsters, like, sir, is it safety areas has working in safety area has more value than that of clinical data management? No, it doesn't work like that. Both the areas are equally important. Okay, so safety area, the moment you are working on this area, it has its own values, it has its own career perspective. You move up in the value chain, you'll see so many things. You work in the literature aspect, you work in the legal cases, you work in the clinical trial cases. Then I talked about the safety reporting. There are areas like risk management, RMPs, what we call. You work in the signal detections. So it all depends upon the moment you increase your domain, you increase your experience, and you climb up in these areas of your career. So with that, I'll move to the next slide. Yeah. So till now, what I discussed about is to give a perspective about what is this area all about. Now, I want to really, next few slides, I want to kind of switch the gear a bit, like what is happening today, what is today's trend, and where is the industry moving. So next few slides certainly kind of is more about, what is the current trend, the future aspects and others. More and more of the technology intervention coming in. The question is why? You know, the grand old days, in order to do a clinical trial, when you recruit a subjects, always the recruitment is to happen in terms of various, traditional channels. Okay, interview happens over telephone. There are other channels as well. Now, with the advent of social media, social channels, the recruitment has increased like multifold. Yeah, the number of cases also increased multifold, because think about it. I took a crocin. I mean, just take a name. I should not take a name of a drug. Let's say I took a drug and I felt a bit dizziness. I call up the contact center, and it might land up to an adverse event. It may not. It depends upon the assessment. Okay. Now the thing is, how this is happening now. Those grand old days, you have to make a phone call and others. Now there are so many other channels out there. There are chat box, there is WhatsApp, there are social channels, there are fax, a lot of other channels are kind of available. So certainly the reportability, the contact center volume has increased multifold, and certainly the number of cases has increased. And more important, the regulatory bodies are tightening up the norms. And when we see there's a gradual increase of volume in the last 5 years, I mean, I should not talk about a decade. Last 5 years, the volume has increased significantly. The advent of the technology is very important. Now, technology penetration, from my perspective, in the pharmaceutical life sciences is very slow. It has its own reasons, because it has a lot of regulations. Always remember, two industry is highly regulated. One is the airline, another life sciences, because you are talking about the safety. Yeah. So these are highly regulated. So when it comes to life sciences industry, the penetration of digitization it's slightly bit slow compared to the other industry vertical. Now, specific to pharmacovigilance, a lot happening. Seriously, a lot happening. I still remember 2 years, 3 years back, people used to crack jokes saying like, I don't think it's going to happen. It's very difficult. When you do a medical review, you do the causality assessment. How you're going to do it? There's a decision tree. My answer to those individuals, no, you are underestimating the technology. I'll give a very simple example over here. 2008, I still remember, the clinical data management. I always give this example. We always used to have the paper-based studies, yeah, paper-based clinical studies. Now, can you tell me, is there any paper-based clinical trial going on? Maybe very few, very rare, and that too on the remote location. All are the EDCs, all are the electronic. Now, when actually technology companies are converting or working on the implementation of those case report forms, the CRTs, unique CRF, what we call about, into electronic format, there are a lot of people actually didn't accept that. And that's fine, because change management never happens overnight. It takes some time for people to adopt it. I mean, that's very fair. So over here also, we will be facing the same thing. As I speak, a lot going on in the PV area in terms of the automations. What was there a few years back versus today, there is a substantial increase. There are two databases which you always remember, which are has the biggest market share. One is from Oracle Argus. Oracle Argus. I mean, most of the companies or the CROs are running their safety work activities based on Argus. Then, of course, the other one is the Ares Global. Aris Global is another one, which is a second biggest, okay, the market share. But there are at least 5% which has in-house database, like pharmaceutical companies. I'll can talk about Sanofi was having Aware, moving to Argus very recently, just 2 years back. Then of course you have AstraZeneca, they are in Sapphire. Then you have several companies, I can name several companies who has in-house database, okay, safety database, they have it, okay. And so there's a small percentage wherein safety database which are in-house built. But the point I'm making is, this is one area, but what was there in the Aris Global before versus today, there's a drastic change. The upper layer of when you do the work of the case processing, it has been completely automated. What does it mean? Basically, it auto-populates all the data and it comes over. Yeah. So technology is, taking over the triaging activities, the booking activity, the data entry activity, all are getting automated. Okay. Of course, don't get into the nuance of, whether people will lose job, and I think no, the answer is no. Yeah. But so very soon we'll get into the artificial intelligence. People do claim that AI is working, but always remember that AI, you can always build an AI, but AI has to work, right? How AI will work? AI work based on the data. You have to build the data. Look at the Alexa. Look at the Google Assistant. Google has enough of data built in for the last a few years, and that's why it's working pretty effectively. It never happens like Alexa will come one single day and they start working. No, you have to have the data and keep on honing the skills, keep on honing the skills. And what we have seen a few years back versus today, there's a drastic difference. So the same thing is going to happen over here. So data analytics, big data technology, the secondary data source, cloud-based is slightly, I know it will catch up later, but still, because the regulatory norms comes into play. The most important part when you talk about any technology intervention or any applications or anything in this area, it has to be regulated, it has to be validated as per the FDA. Okay. So when we talk about validation, obviously 21 part 11 CFR, all this validation comes into play. And of course it has to be a validated system, and those are the important. So when it comes to the cloud enabled activity, still it's very, very slow penetration over here. But in the other side of it, we see a big movement going on. At least my personal perspective, in 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line, there will be a drastic change in this area. So with that view of the current trend in the pharmacovigilance market, we'll quickly move to the next slide. Yeah. So of course, the question is like, why the transformation needed? As I said, always the approach is how to cut short the drug development life cycle, how we can cut short the cycle time. When it comes to processing a case, as I said, the safety is the utmost priority. The automation and innovation is the key. The day we stop innovating, that means there's a problem with us. Yeah. So always remember that innovation is the key. Innovation will keep on drive us, this industry, the leaders, the overall work is always kind of going to be a driving factor with the innovations. It's a continuous improvement. Yeah. So automation innovation is a key over here that will keep on, the cycle time will be reduced, the cost of productivity, the efficiency and the productivity is very important. Think about the mobile device, right? 10 years back, how was the mobile? I still remember my first mobile. That fantastic model that Nokia I always talk about. Yeah, the first phone. I think 3334. I forgot the model name. From those days versus today, it's just 15 years. Yeah, and how things has changed. There's a drastic change. You have hundreds of apps, you have so many things, you have the ease of working, their AI works on the back of it. Now you just can't think about without a mobile, right? So that is the way our life has transformed. And why it happens? Because it brings the efficiency of our work, the operational ease. So that's where the automation and the innovation comes into play. Yeah. So digitization of medicine, the foundation, the foundation of the automation, various app related work is happening. So this is one area. Certainly there are a lot of automations, and the innovations are already into play. It is happening. And I'm really kind of very bullish about this area. There will be one of the big change in the next few years to come, and certainly we'll talk about how we'll go through that kind of journey. So with that, we'll move to the next slide, Dr. Maso. Yeah, so I touch base this some of this, the Oracle, Argus Safety, and the Ares Global, Ares G, what we call them out. A few of this platform which we are kind of looking at it, not necessarily is a complete list. Of course, everyone has working, like Oracle themselves is working on the AERS, but it's a kind of, they came a bit late. Genpact came with the Cora platform. Wipro, they have their own platform, Smartons. Of course, Smartons, a revised version, a much advanced version is getting launched in few days time. You will come to know in a few weeks. Okay. And then of course you have Accenture, Intent, and then of course Cognizant, Aspire Life. I know about TCS as well. And then of course there are smaller companies who are niche and working very specific in this field. I can talk about like RX Logic. Okay, RX Logics. Okay, this is one company specifically working in the PV areas. So when you get some time, you should visit them, visit the website and have a quick study like what is happening. Then you yourself will see like there is a lot happening in this area, and it is platform agnostic. Means irrespective of your platform, irrespective of your database, it can sit on top of it. You can decouple any point of time, and you can move along. Okay, that everyone is following that approach. Yeah. So I'll quickly move on to the next slide. Dr. Masum, you can skip the case study. Yeah, move on. Next slide. Next. Yeah, so I'll give a pause over here. Let me just kind of I have covered a lot of basics over here. Then I'll give some industry outlook as well in a few minutes time. But just wanted to let you know that people who are doing the B Farm, M Farm, who are kind of about to pass out, my sincere request to all of you, please go through it. Some of this, if you really want to kind of looking forward to this career, and it not necessarily a B Farm, M Farm person will be working in the pharmacovigilance area. The answer is absolutely no. If you are a B Farm, M Farm, certainly you are much ahead. Of course, you are preferred, certainly, but people who are in the life sciences area, like typical microbiology or say biotechnology, some of these areas, certainly you can look forward to this career. Of course, there are client specific rules as well. They sometimes say like, no, I want this kind of skill set people to kind of work for processing my cases. So that's a different thing. Hardly one or two clients say that's nowadays, but otherwise at least I have not heard about it. But yeah, medical review is one of the areas, certainly always a physician or a medic. I mean, not necessarily MBBS doctor. It all again depends upon the client. Like sometimes a BHMS, somebody who's a homeopath, somebody who's Ayurved, certified. They can also do the review, and it depends on the client, but typically that's the norm. But yeah, this is a career which will certainly a very promising one, and I know MAKAUT is working really hard in this aspect to bring more and more youngsters, more and more students. They should be benefited out of in pharmacovigilance areas. And I always look forward to the BPharm, MPharm, the graduates and people who enrolled newly, that you should go through, do some study in terms of the future aspects, the career goal and others. And if you are not getting the right view, you should reach out, and that will certainly help you out. Yeah. And always remember one thing, the last two line is very important. I always say this: in today's world, you have more competition. Everyone is intelligent. When you are sitting in your joint entrance exam or in your entrance exam and others, it means, and you have cleared, it means like you are already one of the best students. Yeah. But what makes important is the hard work, your hands-on experience. So always remember, it's my advice to all of you, like, please, there is no shortcut. There is no shortcut to hard work. Please work hard, and please always try to have hands-on experience. You'll gain respect. I still kind of sit next to, when you get some when I get some time, of course, due to the COVID scenario, it's a different, yeah. I mean, sit next to an analyst who is processing a case, because it kind of, it give me an opportunity to learn as well. More and more cases, it has its own nuances. Yeah. And then, of course, the communication skill and the right attitude. It is very, very important how optimistic you are. The attitude in today's world is very, very important. So I deliberately kept the last 2 points, which is very, very important. And always remember that these two aspects will take you a long way. So with that, I move to the next slide to talk about the market. uh, of course, this is a career growth. I think I have already taken in terms of, talked about data entry, the case processor, quality reviewer, how you climb up in the value chain, and it gains with the experience, right? RMP is basically, the risk management plan, So this is the way you can gain the trajectory, whether you are with the FSP, functional service provider, what we call the IT companies, the Wipros of the world, the Cognizant of the world, the TCS of the world, the Infosys of the world, the Accenture of the world. We call those are the FSPs, the functional service provider, the IT companies. And then, of course, we have the CROs, the clinical research organization. They also do those work, right? So it's the same trajectory. And if you are working with a pharmaceutical company, of course, it's the same trajectory as well. And you can end up becoming a therapeutic area lead, or you can be a safety officer tomorrow. So it's a big career aspect, and it's a really a serious, and it's a huge importance. And as I said, safety officer, the safety data and the clinical data is a backbone of a pharmaceutical company. So always remember that it's both the career is very important. So with that, I'll move to the next slide, which gives quickly on the market. Yeah. So if you just look at it, this is very important, the outsourcing market. So as I speak with you, we are sitting with a market of around $4 billion. Okay. So I'm just talking about the outsourcing market. Yeah, that means you put it in this way: a pharmaceutical company always, if they need 100 people, they always try to keep some 20 people, 20% of the people in house to do that work, and then of course the rest 80%, 70% depend upon company to company, the policies and the strategy varies, to outsource. So what you are seeing, this $4 billion is the outsourceable market. Yeah. Now, there are various sectors which has not been outsourced, like when you move up in the value chain about the RMP work, you move up in the value chain in terms of the safety assessment work, the signal detection work. Still, pharmaceutical companies, they don't want to outsource. Some of the biggies already outsources, but medium and small scale pharmaceutical industry, companies, they are slightly bit conservative. They still don't want to outsource it because the work is very small, hardly few individuals is working, and very niche, and it is a very people-centric work. So when we talk about the outsourceable market, that $4 billion is as we today, think about it, how it is growing in 2020. So if you look at it, this is, as per the analyst report, it's going to hit almost like, 2.5 to 3 times. Like we are talking about almost $11 billion. That's a huge market. We are sitting in 2020. We are talking about 2025, 2026. So that means 5 years down the line, it will be climbing almost like 3 times. Yep. So that's a huge market. So certainly it's a very promising career. To all the youngsters who are kind of hearing me and who are looking forward to this career, certainly it's a big career aspect you should look forward to. But it, as you move up, you need to kind of look at it like you have to hone your skills, you have to bring your expertise. Learning is a everyday journey, right? So always remember that, and information is a key. So as you have the experience, as you have the knowledge, that will be the driving factor for you. Slowly you'll find like less number of people is needed for triaging activity. Who does the triaging? Understand the triaging, right? If somebody is having some medical falling ill, like what do? First you hit the emergency department in a hospital, right? So emergency department, what they do the triaging activity. They do the assessment whether really you have to put the patient to whether it's like indicator 4, indicator 3, depends like where you have to put it. A specialized doctor needed, whether he or she has to move to OT. Depends. So who does that assessment is basically somebody who's a physician, who's a medic, right? So same thing, the triaging activity, the assessment happens. The number of people doing the triaging activity may reduce. Data entry, as I said, auto-populated. Then comes the processing and others. There will be a huge chunk of people needed. So you have to always be kind of forward looking. You start your journey. It's a huge area, and certainly a lot of people needed over here. It's a big market over here, and certainly this information is kind of this area is a big area. So with that, I'll kind of open up for questions and over to Dr. Chakrabarti and Dr. Hussain, to share any views, and I'll look forward to the questions. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Saikot, for excellent speech. I hope definitely it has enriched our participants. Thank you for explaining the importance of pharmacovigilance and the mechanism and the career prospect of pharmacy, non-pharmacy student, and the future, and a lot of avenues which that are very new. We didn't know you have highlighted that will come in near future. Uh, uh, Great. Thank you so much. So now I would like to request Professor Purnavesh Chakraborty to sum up the talk of Mr. Shaikot Biswas. Sir, kindly unmute. Prem Kumar, kindly unmute Professor Purnavesh Chakraborty.
Yes, sir. Pranavesh sir, kindly unmute, sir.
Sir, on the left-hand side in your laptop, left-hand side, you'll see a
Left
button.
bottom side, yes, sir. Left bottom.
Left bottom, you'll see the mute button.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. One more time, sir.
One more time, sir.
Maybe system getting hanged.
Just click one.
So just click once.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
sir.
yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes.
It's done.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Shubho Sandhya.
Very good evening to all the participants and my warm wishes to Mr. Shoikat Bishwas for nice illustration. Now, this is my chance to sum up the total thing. Let me start from the inception. On behalf of the webinar team and the university, extending my warm and hearty thanks to our dynamic and dreamy Vice Chancellor of MAKAUT, Professor Shoikat Moitro, for his constant, encouraging, inspiring, and thought-provoking deliberation. His broad-spectrum thought process always encourages and shows a new path to add value to the all-out scientific, technological, and cultural developments of the university. He dreams and used to inject those positive dreams to others so that we can develop in the all-round segments. It's a privilege to thank Mr. Shoikat Bishwas, Global Head of Wipro, who has explicitly and nicely depicted every tidbit of pharmacovigilance from every nook and corner. He has beautifully and very convincingly covered in a simple and lucid language the genesis of pharmacovigilance, from thalidomide disaster to the birth of the concept of pharmacovigilance and its importance. Pharmacovigilance, what is meant by it? Why it is so important for safety and security of human life. The requirements of pharmacovigilance in India, what are guided by specification Schedule Y of the Drug and Cosmetic Act 1945. What is Schedule Y? And if any serious toxicity, side effects occurs, that is to be immediately informed to the CDSCO within 15 days. The legal requirements and advancement in other countries like USA, European Union, etc., etc. Mr. Bishwas has also thrown some new light to the use of upcoming technologies which are added to pharmacovigilance for much better pharma performance and results. Like artificial intelligence, it can bridge the gap between PV and fast-paced market expectations. AI has the ability to assimilate large amount of cloud-based data and correlate with genetics and disease occurrence in order to effectively predict adverse drug reaction. Automation in PV. Automation enables increased labor efficiency by removing clerical tasks in non-value adding PV processes. Data analytics. Use of data analytics tools and methods in PV processes increase the speed of signal detection, which essentially seeks information on drug adverse event or beneficial relationship. Future prospect of the subject and the job avenues for the students, including the career graph and prospect of tomorrow of our students in the professional field. I hope and expect that the deliberation of Mr. Bishwas has certainly provided a booster in the thought process of our students for the coming days. Thank you, Mr. Bishwas, for your nice depiction on the topic, which has obviously enlightened our beloved students as well as our learned faculty members. I am also extending my hearty thanks to Dr. C.M. Hussain, Head, Department of Pharmaceutical Technology, MAKAUT, for his onerous work to arrange such a seminar which will help the students for their future and nice deliberation at the beginning. We also indebted the respected registrar, controller of examination, assistant registrar, assistant controller, and all the directors, principals, head of departments, professors, and Mr. Prem Kumar and other staffs of our university, as well as from different constituent colleges, and especially our students from different parts of the country to make this webinar a grand success. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Professor Chakraborty, for nicely summing up the talk of Mr. Soikat Biswas. Now I would like to request our Honorable Vice Chancellor to say something. Sir, please.
Okay, this was a very nice and brief discussion, but what we require now, we want to have some workshop and training program in this particular area before we start our actual academic program. Today, maybe it is one of the curtain raiser activity in this aspect, particularly in the initiation of pharmacovigilance at our university system. But we would like to have more these training and workshops for our communities, so that the people can be more comfortable in handling different tools, techniques, and applying different concepts in pharmacovigilance and gaining more knowledges in pharmacovigilance. And that will be my request to Dr. Hossain and Professor Pranav Chakraborty. Kindly take the help of experts like Mr. Soikat Biswas and others in this field to organize training and workshop programs in near future. And that is required, very much required right now, because we need to reskill our these young forces to the best possible extent from different perspectives, where the opportunities are existing in all these areas. And pharmacovigilance, as it has been pointed out by Mr. Biswas, that and I also told that it is going to be a very fascinating career for all these persons who will be interested to blend the knowledge of biological science, pharmaceutical science with information science. And that type of combinations and blending of knowledges that will be coming in different, different phases and different areas of our traditional systems of these skills and expertise. And in near future, we would like to have more numbers of experts in this area to take care of this huge requirement of this country, because considering these vast populations of this country, public healthcare systems of this country, these drugs and all these things, abundance of these drugs and all these things, indiscriminate uses of drugs, and then there are lots of issues are involved with this. Maybe that require further deliberations. The drugs which are being prescribed, how far these are useful, and how far these are, in terms of efficacy and effectiveness, how far these are. So all these things, because in our Indian systems, this public healthcare needs to be improved significantly, and their pharmacovigilance can have a very crucial role to play. And with this, I believe that in near future, we are going to introduce digital health systems. We are going to introduce pharmacovigilance systems. That means full, this spectrum of all these subjects we would like to have with us, so that persons from different background, these backgrounds, different domains, different levels of expertise, with them we can have a very formidable networking, collaborations, integrations, and ultimately it will give rise to a very, this formidable knowledge development and skill development for our youngsters. So my advice again to all these participants, kindly explore these subjects. There are many resources, online resources available. At least try to browse these resources to gain some initial, these ideas about these subjects. We will be organizing definitely different workshops and webinars and training programs. But before that, through self-learning, try to gain at least some meaningful insights of these subjects. And this is, I can tell you, these types of, these studies and gaining knowledge will be always helpful for you in building up your career in the coming days. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for directing and suggesting to conduct a more training and workshop. We will definitely do it. And one point that is very important, Professor Soikat Mitra, our Honorable Vice Chancellor, has explained that irrational use of drugs, irrational prescription, that is really important in our country, because the lot of prescription errors are there. There is no detection systems, because in prescription, in a single prescription, 10 to 12 drugs are prescribed, 2 or 3 antibiotics are prescribed, which the drugs prescribed, which is actually not required to the particular patient, or the right patient for the right dose or right drug in the right time. That is not followed in our country, definitely. So there will be immense scope to detect or intervene, to develop our public health in future. Definitely will do, sir. So, Mr. Soikot Vishwas, may I start the interactive session?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
So
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions. Let me ask you. Then I think some students has raised their hand. We'll take their questions. Is it okay?
Yep.
Okay. So I will ask some questions. I think definitely those questions will cover many questions of the participants. The first question is, in drug development life cycle, when case processing happens, could you explain it?
Yeah, I see one of those questions as well. So I think I mentioned it, like when I took the the initial slides. Um, when case processing happens, people always have a belief like, well, it means PMS, like post-marketing surveillance. No, as I said, like P4, like phase 4, and the drug development life cycle, wherein you do the post-marketing surveillance. But certainly, case processing happened during phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, because the PV activities, when you take in P1, P2, P3, like the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, it's basically you are checking the safety efficacy of a drug in a much more controlled manner. Yeah. So I give the example of the SARC. So, to answer your question, yes, it happens in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 as well, but predominantly we see like a huge work is in the post-marketing surveillance side of it. That's phase 4.
Okay. Thank you. What is vigilance? Can you provide some more insight into it?
See, vigilance is very important. I think when I talked about the E2B, that is the R2 and the R3. So first thing first is when you talk about the vigilance, is what is vigilance? Yeah, so it's basically your European Union regulatory authorities pharmacovigilance, what you call, yeah, and it's a European data processing network and the management system. You do that for the reporting, the evaluation of the suspected adverse events for that medicine, which has been authorized or being studied in the suspected in the clinical trials of a economic area, what we call as a European economic area, what we call, right? So that's your vigilance. But it started with the the R2. Of course, currently it is the R3, and I completely mentioned what is the difference in the beginning. The R3 is basically it's a modified version wherein you captured more of the details of the data. There are more of standardization of data happen, inclusiveness happens, the collaboration with the stakeholders happens. So that's where it is. So I'll give an example. Let's say a good example could be a prescription drug. Okay, a prescription drug for a particular molecule. The compound I'm talking about, that compound while forming that, you actually use another compound, like say aspirin. Okay, you used it. Now while forming the previous compound, the aspirin I'm talking about, you already do the case processing, right? Now you are coming to a new compound, yeah, and you have taken the help of that previous one. So certainly, what one of the guidelines say that when you do the case processing of this new one, you have to open the previous one as well. So that means, let's say for this particular compound, you have 10 cases, just to take an example for the discussion sake. Yeah. Now it's not 10. You have the previous one as well. So that means your case volume increased. Yeah. That's why when ultravigilance comes into play, when the E2B work comes into play, there's a certain trigger of a huge volume of case processing. Yeah. And it all happened due to the rigor of the safety norm implemented by the European authority. So if I may put it in that way. So that's what vigilance all about.
Excellent. So, what's your view about the various platforms available in the market today for pharmacovigilance case processing?
Platforms, I already kind of I see one questions like this as well. Okay, the platform I mentioned about the Oracle Argus, I mentioned about the Ares Global. These are the two biggest. If I go by the market share, Oracle Argus is almost like, I mean, look, it could be debatable, and this is my personal view. Okay, and it is roughly around 75% to 80%. Oracle is having the market share. As Global is having roughly around 15%, 15 to 17%. Rest 3 to 5% is the in-house, database. Okay, so these are the safety database we are talking about. And when we talk about the various platform for automations and others, I already there was a slide like we talked about the various IT players coming into play. Where Wipro has its own platform. Wipro has actually a big, product suite come homes, okay, which is very much proven in it's one of the top three, yeah. And Wipro Homes is actually across the industry verticals. You just plug and play, yeah. So of course, one of the part of that, the smart answer is a platform being used for the life sciences. Of course, the advanced one is coming in few days, I mentioned, right? So similarly, you have the TCS, you have the Cognizant, you have Cora, I talked about Genpact, Accenture. So everyone has his own platform. So yeah, these are the multiple platforms. Though these are the automation centric. What if I want to look at it, but you are talking of the safety database. I already mentioned about Argus, Ares Global, and the in-house database. I hope that answered the questions.
Yeah, great, great. So, next question, uh, is it really needed one to be a qualified registered HCP in order to process a PV case?
No, I think I answered that in the career progress, right? Not needed. But I just wanted to bring it to your notice, like there are some client specific ask. Okay, some of the big pharmaceutical, the biggies. Okay, if I don't take their names, they might have a in-house policies or regulation that I need a certified person, B Farm, M Farm person, or a certified nurse to to process my case. Okay, that could be. But I know just one client or two client does that, but they have already made a shift. Okay, so now to answer your question, is it really needed kind of a certified person to process a case? The answer is no. But of course, you will be a preferred one because you will be having really, really good knowledge. But nevertheless, others in the life sciences or HCP persons like microbiologists, biotechnologists, people who are in the genetic sides and genetic engineering and others certainly look forward for a promising career to process case. Then I talked about the various layers, like the various stages, right? The triaging, the booking, and all aspects. And when you move to the medical review, certainly, the class one cases, the death cases of what we talk about, the client always ask like a medic, physician needs to review that. Yeah. So these are the specific asks. Typically, AMR, most of the companies have that norm that a physician has to do that. Could be a MBBS doctor or a a BHMS or a alternative medicine, what you call, to do assessment or review of that cases, and the medical review part only. But the prior one, the answer is no again. Like you don't need to be a certified person. So yeah, so that's opening up. So I hope that answer your questions.
Yeah, got it. So you are talking about the medical review, right? In your slide, you are talking about the medical review, the automation of medical review. Is it really possible?
I am a firm believer that it is possible. Okay, there are a lot of startups in these areas in the medical technology side. I am associated with. I mean, there are various startups where in the incubation stage, there are various helps. Many of us we provide from the industry side of it, just to kind of help the youngsters to fulfill their dream, because we feel really kind of happy or satisfied when we see some of the youngsters who are enthusiastic, starting a startup, and they are successful. So coming back to your question, original question, that medical review, the answer is yes. I'll give an example over here. People often kind of debate on the causality aspect, right? Uh, um, uh, what is causality? Causality is basically the relationship between the cause and effect that everyone knows, right? But causality, when you actually do that, is a questionnaire based. Yeah, there is a company. I mean, if you just do some Google search and others, it's Germany based. Okay, causali.com. If you can kindly, when you get some time, browse through. They are working on that impossible task of automating the medical review. Of course, there is a medical review as a feature. All these companies who are working on the automation, they're building it. Yeah, they say the QC and the medical review, there is a feature over there. But there are niche players, there are niche small startup are already working in this area, because this is a very difficult task, and they want to work specifically on this impossible areas. And let me tell you, the owner of this company is a medic as well. Okay, the person is a physician as well. So to answer your question, medical review, is it possible? I, being a technology a person, I'll say yes. Years to come to prove it. But yeah, we need to kind of wait and watch where it moves.
Okay, okay, thank you. Next question, it says that ICSR processing is getting commoditized every day. Automation grappling over. Is it going to cost jobs? I think this is very important questions.
This is a very common question. So when I kind of meet people during town halls or any meetings or any kind of speech, I mean, these are very common questions. I mean, let me tell you, um, is it going to cost jobs? The answer is no, absolutely no. Please, if you have a slightest down, even a doubt or even 1% doubt, you should just flush it away. Automations, the technology intervention is going to come, and it is the future, and you have to move along. You have to adopt the changes. And if you still kind of having some doubt, my suggestion is you watch the Star Wars movie. Yeah, you'll see in the Star Wars movie. I mean, I was there in my later part of the school days, high school days. You will see iPad over there. Those days, people are like, what is this? Now everyone is having a notepad, iPad, and all those, right? So it has changed. Our life has changed. So coming back to the point, automation is the key. Technology intervention is the key, and is going to change the world, is going to change the way we work. Is a change management going to happen, and we have to adopt the change, and we will be reskilled. I think Dr. Mitro in his speech already kind of mentioned it, like the reskilling is very important, and it's the individual, up to the individual, how he or she wants to reskill. Of course, organization will do that, industry, the universities, the organizations, various organizations is going to do that. But the driver has to be the individual. Yeah. And that's why the hard work comes into play. The regular learning comes into play. And, we are into a knowledge-based industry. Please remember that. And it's a continuous learning, which is a key for success. Yeah. So having that said, automation is the key. Automation is the future, is going to kind of take over, but certainly is not going to take over all. Pharmaceutical line is a line that decision making is very important. So of course, individuals who are landing into this career, their knowledge honing skill is very important. And they have to move along. They have to decide themselves where they fit, and there won't be any job loss. I always keep on saying this. And at least in the last 2-3 years, we have seen automation doing a lot of things, like people who used to do a booking, people who used to do push the cases in the workflow management tool. Now everyone has a workflow management tool. Is that person who used to do that work has lost their job? He or she lost their job? The answer is no. That person moved to the booking. So everyone has a role to play.
Yeah, that's great. So the last question from my side, then I will go to the question from, I'll take question from participants. The last question: how is market going to be more PV in next 5 years down the line?
I think, I already kind of have the last slide. I think I mentioned that, right? Currently, as we speak, the outsourceable market is around, roughly around $4 billion outsourcing market for PV. And of course, the industry is pretty big. I'm talking about the outsourcing market. That is roughly around $4 billion. But in 5 years down the line, it is going to climb threefold, okay? Almost like $11 billion. That's the estimate. And the estimate is keep on moving, changing, okay? So it's a huge demand, and we need more and more people. There will be more and more technology intervention going to happen as well. And certainly it's a huge demanding area.
Okay, thank you. Prem Kumar. Prem Kumar?
Yes, sir.
So anybody is there who has raised their hand?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir Koheli Biswas. I am allowing him
So
to talk.
allowing her.
Yes, sir. Kindly unmute your mic, Koheli Biswas, please.
Koheli
Hello?
Biswas, kindly unmute your mic. Hello?
Sir.
She's
I'm
there?
asking to unmute.
Yes. So moving to next, Rishabh Manji.
Rishabh Maji,
Hello?
are you there? Rishabh Maji, are you there? Next one.
Next.
Shreyoshi Bhattacharya.
So kindly unmute. Shreyoshi Bhattacharya. Premkor, allow her.
Yes, sir, I am allowed.
Okay,
Already
Manoj.
I have allowed.
Okay, Manoj.
I'm next.
Sir. Devjani Mukhopadhyay. Kindly unmute your mic, Devanjani Mukhopadhyay. Hello?
I see some of the questions over here in the chat box they have written. Okay. So probably, I don't know, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, of course, everyone, is on the network. So certainly there could be bandwidth issues. So I see some of the questions over here. Shreyoshi Bhattacharya, the first question, how can I use
permit korlo?
Which
Yes,
one?
sir. Yes, sir. Ranjan Ranajoy Das.
Oh, yes, allow him. Are you
Kindly
there?
unmute your mic, Ranajoy Das. Hello? Hello? Ranajoy Das, you are allowed to talk. May you please unmute your mic?
Okay, Soikat sir, please go ahead. You
Yeah,
can take
so I
Q&A.
see some of the questions over here, like how can I use a pharmacovigilance subject as a student of data science? Okay, look, I mean, data science is a coined word nowadays. Okay, with a lot of activities happening around, data science. Data science is more pertains to the analytics side of it. So and pharmacovigilance, we had a lot of discussion. It is a field of its own. Data science is part of it. Now, uh, you really need to kind of understand more over here, like what is pharmacovigilance, and as a student of data science, where you want to focus. If you are really, if you love that subjects and want to be in the data science, so certainly you should look at the analytics side of it. Yeah, the safety data analytics. So certainly that would be one of my advice. But you need to know more and then kind of move along in terms of where you can justify your knowledge, your skill set, so on and so forth. Yeah. I see some of the questions. Anonymous attendee. When is thalidomide? Okay, tragedy happens. If I remember,
It's
it is,
1961.
yeah, correct. It is around 1961.
61.
It happened, and it is quite well known. Okay, it's around that time it happened, 1961, and by whom it has been detected. Obviously, we don't want to take any agency or names, and that's not the right way to do that. But yes, it is one of the very well known tragedy happened, and lot of a lot of learning came into play after that in this field. Yeah. um, ADR
Okay,
days.
so I would like just request. I would just request to select the representative question, like which you have already covered. It is not necessary to pick up that.
How does Wipro send ICSR through Oracle Argus to any other database? No. um, no company sends any ICSR to anyone. When you start working, you are actually logging to that pharmaceutical company database. Think about it. Let's say I am a pharmaceutical company. I'll put it in this way. So I have a database. What is my database? Let's say I have an Oracle Argus database. So, and let's say you are doing the case processing. So I will be giving access to you, and you will be directly doing the work. I hope I answered it. Okay. So all these companies, they are the vehicle in between. Yeah. So if you are employed to one of those companies, and they actually give you the platform, they give you how to hook up to the database, what we call as a VDI, virtual desktop interface. Through that, you just enter, you have the login created, you entered into that pharmaceutical company, Oracle Argus. So nobody has authority to do that, because as I said, like, it's the regulated one, so nobody can touch that. Okay. uh, Second question is causality assessment. I think I answered that questions. Okay. It is one of the area which certainly is evolving. A lot of things are happening. AI will come at a lot of later phase, not now. First we need to see what has come out. You have to build the data, and then only the AI will work on top of it. Yeah. As this COVID scenario, what is the scenario of recruitment? Okay, this is a very specific. I don't want to kind of focus on that. Um, okay, job opportunities in the pandemic situation. Yes, there are a lot of job opportunities going on. We just shifted. We used to work at office. Now we are working out of home. That is the only changes happen, and it's a new normal. Yeah, nothing has changed otherwise. Nothing has changed otherwise. Yeah. So that is a point I wanted to mention over here.
Sure, sure.
Okay. And BTech pharmaceutical technology. I'm interested in clinical SAS programming. Yes. Okay. Can you suggest me any popular online professional courses? I think you should certainly talk to your university, Dr. Masum, Dr. Chakraborty, reach out to them. There are a lot of courses around SAS programming and others, but you really need to kind of look at it where you are looking at. Statistical programming is one area, clinical programming is one another area. So you need to first know a little bit and then kind of move along accordingly. For example, like statistical programming, various universities offer that, even in India Statistical Institute.
Yes, sir.
So people land up into biostatistics, statistical programming. That's a very, very niche areas, okay? Quantitative science we call about in the clinical side of it, R&D, okay, research and development of a drug. But there is a clinical programming as well, okay, in the clinical trial. So you need to know a little bit more on this area. Get in touch with your university, and certainly they will help you out. Yep. Inform 2-3 years of experience, pharmacovigilance. Yes, you can certainly look at a promising career in pharmacovigilance. Okay. What revolution has been made in India from ADR? I think this is very specific. Certainly, it's a debatable topic as well. Won't be proper to debate over here. Certainly, I mean, there are a lot of informations. I mean, we can talk a lot on this area. What does Indian PV need to reach its full potential in safeguarding the? Yeah, of course. I mean, there's a lot. I think Dr. Mitro mentioned and Dr. Masum also mentioned about it. Let me tell you, like, in India, of course, it's not only in India. With the advent of, the mobile technologies and others, certainly, whenever, before I meet a doctor, even the youngsters, they check it out. Okay, I'm facing this problem. What has happened to me? They do a Googling. Any medicine, they do a Googling and all those stuff. That has become a trend nowadays. Okay, that's a new norm. Now, if you talk to be very specific on the Indian market, I mean, I think everyone has a habit of buying antibiotic over here without knowing the repercussion of antibiotic. Okay, I am facing some viral fever, something. I'm not going to doctor. I'm just taking some antibiotic. Everyone knows about amoxicillin or some of the antibiotic, and then of course visiting a clinic or a pharmacy store, and they also give, okay, you are facing this anomaly, you are having a cough, this medicine, yeah, you take a vitamin C, you take a paracetamol, you take a antibiotic. But there is always a say, like, you should not take more antibiotic because that hits your immunity power. And of course, there's a course needed, and it has to be guided by a physician, a doctor as well. Okay. So coming back to your original question, potential safeguarding, this is a quick example why it is needed.
So another question here.
Yeah.
So
Sir,
I'm
this is
just,
Ranajay Das asking some question.
okay. Allow him.
Yes, sir, I have allowed. Kindly unmute your mic, Ranajay Das, and speak loudly. Hello.
Go ahead.
I think this procedure won't work. Better, Dr. Hossein, you can continue.
Okay. So let me give answer of a question from Professor Ananta Kumar Das. He is professor, I think, from MAKAUT. He asks that even after thorough diagnosis test, why doctors prescribe number of drugs? Is 1 or 2 drugs are enough for the remedy of disease, or doctors lack confidence? The answer is that, Professor Das, that actually the drugs are prescribed by doctors in India, but in US or Europe, the drugs diagnosis is made by doctors, and the drugs are selected by pharmacists, clinical pharmacists, basically clinical pharmacologists. But in India, there is no like monitoring system that to check the prescription before handing over to the patient, because there must be a gateway. There must be a check post, because drug is a chemical. This is not a like food or fruits or anything to enjoy. This is a chemical that will, if number of drugs will reach in our blood circle, it will cause lots of toxicity, and it may cause side effect, and it may cause disease, as I said earlier. So in India, actually, there is no system. Lack of system is responsible for this. If there is a system to check the prescription, whether the number of drugs is okay, whether there is a drug-drug interaction, whether drug-food interaction, whether there is a drug-disease interaction. So a lot of things are to be checked in prescription before giving to the patient. As India is a highly populated country, but this system is very important to improve the quality of health of our country. I think this system is lacking. Also,
Absolutely, you're right, Dr. Masum. I mean, in US, I mean, let me tell you, like if you visit a doctor and if the doctor prescribes something nowadays, I mean, at least before I left US, I mean, the system is the doctors say that you visit the where do you live? I give my zip code. I mean, basically the pin code over here, okay, and they say like, okay, you visit to this Walgreen or this CVS
CVS,
store, and you will get the medicine over there. That means they don't give me the prescription also. Okay, I go to the pharmacy, that particular pharmacy. I ask the pharmacy says like I need a copy of the prescription. He or she gives the copy of the prescription. Sometimes doctor does give it. Okay, the prescription nowadays is happening. So why? Coming back to what Dr. Masum just now said, it is a regulation happening that I being a doctor, I am prescribing some of the medicine. I'm telling you directly go to the pharmacy, and this pharmacy will give you the medication. Sometimes it's a prepared medication, and sometimes it's of course it's a packaged medication. It depends, right? So that is the way it works. But when it comes to India, of course, if you visit a regulated clinic, okay, they will say like, well, this is the prescription. Somebody will take the prescription from the doctor and you will go directly to the pharmacy, and the pharmacy person will tell you like, okay, this is a drug to be needed, and this many times and all those stuff. But how many such clinics or pharmacy we have? And of course, when you visit outside the city, when you cross the urban area, you know about it, right? So that's the kind of the system we are in. We need regulations, and certainly the regulations are not there.
actually, thing is that the doctors are the disease expert, and the pharmacists are the drug experts. So, during the after prescription, a drug expert should be involved. The drug expert should check it.
Yep.
There will tell something. Yes.
Actually, without the mechanism, we cannot go forward. Mechanism is what? This concept of clinical pharmacy practice, it should come in the mechanism of the government, central or state government, and it will be regulated. Otherwise, we can tell about so many things, but it will not work.
Yes.
Since the people, if they come to a pharmaceutical technologist, they will take the drug, but the doctors and the regulation will be a barrier to that. Obviously, since the concept is missing, the clinical pharmacy practice and clinical research is absolutely absent. We can say that from some of the trainings or some bridge courses, our B.Pharm or M.Pharm, they can practice. That is impossible. If this comes, it is a hoax. Who they preach, they are hoaxers. They preach the lies. Because without the regulation, without the regulated process, it cannot come into the real picture. And not only drug-drug interaction, drug-food interaction, or drug-disease interaction, individual factors. So many individual factors are there. Age, sex, height, environment. As Mr. Vish has told previously, that it was asked, where from you are coming? Means you have to tell the environment, in which environment, what is the temperature over there, what is the climate over there. So many things are there to suggest a medicine. And addition to Professor Masum's answer to Professor Das' question, that whatever medicines are being given, paying ample respect to the physicians, we must tell that what Masum told, that without the check valve, naturally they are being treated as the idols. And the idols, they are giving 2 to 3 antibiotics at a time, 3, 4 some other drugs at a time, without knowing the implications. And with the advent of this pharmacovigilance, you must know that previously we have read, or you have seen the major toxicity, minor toxicity, major side effects, minor side effects. These are nowadays, after the scenario of pharmacovigilance, this absolutely has no meaning. We do not know which minor side effect or toxicity will be major on the next for which patient. So by giving a chemical inside the system, it is dangerous, and with all respect to the friends of medical science, we must tell, they must appreciate that for them also this check valve is required. Otherwise, today or tomorrow, day after, we will be absolutely in a soup. Today we are thinking for COVID. Every day medicine is coming out without knowing the implication. What are the steps for the research? How a medicine is being declared as a drug. Every day, somebody is telling, in my laboratory I have done it. Who has given you the permission? In which manner you have covered the 4 steps of clinical phases? But the media people, the electronic media, the print media, so-called leaders, they are dancing. It has come out. It is only a laughter, giving a laughter to the international people, and we must go through the original things of it. Otherwise, we cannot come. So many scientists are working round the clock for the research, but they are not being greeted. Who are greeted? Who they do not know anything, ABC of the subject. This is the answer of Professor Das.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So we are
I have a hard stop in another 5 minutes. I do have.
yeah,
It's almost going to be 8 o'clock.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, I completely agree with Dr. Chakravarti stated. I mean, when I grew up, when I first into in this life sciences sector, even when we think about the standards in India, I mean, we always say like, well, we do have this standard, that standard on our staff. And of course, it's debatable, but with my personal experience, I'm saying, I mean, it just recently we are seeing actually a real version of some standards in play. Okay. Prior to that, there was no standards. Yeah. Ayushman Bharat we talk about. Is it right? Is complete? The answer is no. A lot of things just to improve. But is it something there today? The answer is yes. At least we have something. We have to kind of, do something on top of it. Yeah. But The question is why it was not there before. I really don't know, but that's the reality. So from the standard perspective, otherwise many people doesn't know from the medical device perspective. I'm wearing a specs. The specs is also a medical device. You may not be knowing. Yeah. So that is the way the whole regulation happens. So coming back to the point of what Dr. Chakraborty said about the drug, to be specific about the drug, I completely agree. Standards and others from the Indian perspective, a lot of things are happening in the last, a few years or so. We just want to carry forward. We want to build on top of it, and then kind of, keep that real. That's it.
Okay, so we are at the end of the program, I think. So thank you, Mr. Soikat বিশ্বাস, for excellently delivering your speech and views and findings of industry mechanism to our participants and future aspect of pharmacovigilance and drug safety. So for participants, I would like to tell that in future we will have webinar series. We have just started on the pharmacovigilance and drug safety. We will we will continue the webinar on the more on the tools and softwares used in the industry, and also some pharmacovigilance part like data collection from the hospital, how the phase 4 trials are conducted in the hospitals, how data are collected. That is another part also that you should know how it is occurring. So some people, they are working like physician and pharmacist, and other people who are working in the hospital setup, they are collecting the data, compiling the data, and the risk assessment is done in the industry like Wipro and others. So we'll continue it in future. And from another information, I'm happy to share with you all participants, especially final year pharmacy student and pharmacy B Pharm, that we are going to start M-Pharm course in a MAKAUT, Master of Pharmacy in Pharmacology, Department of Pharmaceutical Technology, MAKAUT. The two specialization will start from this session. One is pharmacology, another is pharmaceutics. And we are going to start certificate course in the pharmacovigilance. This is already finished. We are just to start it. And another we will start certificate course in the pharmaceutical analytics. And in future, many courses will start like clinical data management, patient safety, clinical research, medical review, medical, what it is like scientific writing, all these things. So on behalf of MAKAUT, I would like to thank Mr. Soikat বিশ্বাস for spending your valuable time with us today and enriching our participants. Thank you, Soikat sir.
Thank you, Dr. Masum, and my heartfelt wishes to Professor Maitra, Saikat Maitra, the Honorable Vice Chancellor. Thank you, Sir Dr. Chakraborty, and then of course Dr. Masum, and the whole support staff who enable the technicians and others who enable this webinar. Thank you so much. And of course, all the participants across the board, I hope this has benefited to all of you with the information shared. And thank you so much, and be safe and take care. And you have a good weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. So finally, I would like to thanks our Honorable Vice Chancellor for approving this, to conduct the seminar, and I would like to thank our register finance officer, assistant controller, assistant registrar, and officers, director, HOD, faculty, staffs, and faculty of Department of Pharmaceutical Technology, and also webinar team, definitely, and webinar team along with Prem Kumar and Manos Ghosh, Mr. Manos Ghosh. I would like to thank Professor Ponobesh Chakraborty. He is the director of Food, Pharmaceutical, and Medical Science of Technology, Department of MAKAUT. I would like to thank sir for spending your valuable time for a long time here. And for participants, I'd like to thanks. It's really exciting to be with us, and future I hope you will stay connected with us. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.